Hello, leaders of the world. Welcome to Spread Love in Organizations, a podcast for purpose-driven healthcare leaders striving to make life better around the world by leading their teams with genuine care, servant leadership, and love. I'm Naji, your host, joined today by Emilia McLaughlin, founder and CEO of catalyzed, a startup based in Paris dedicated to pioneering tomorrow's therapeutics. Originally from London, Emilia moved to Paris in 2017 to pursue her PhD in parasite molecular biology at the Institut Pasteur. Upon completing her PhD, she founded catalyzed, with the aim of enhancing the efficacy of protein therapeutics through innovative glycan modifications. Since its inception, Emilia has successfully recruited a world-class scientific team, established a state-of-the-art lab, secured core technology IP, and garnered over 1.2 million euros in competitive grants from the French government and EU. Additionally, she has raised 1.1 million in equity funding. Currently, the company is testing its first therapeutic and human serum and has developed a robust pipeline of innovative products. In 2024, Emilia was recognized as a woman in leadership by the European Innovation Commission. She's passionate about empowering women to take on leadership roles and supports academics who aspire to transition into entrepreneurship. Emilia, congratulations on this award, and it's a pleasure to have you with me today.
Thank you, Naji. Great to be here.
I would love first to hear more about your personal story. What brought you to biology and now founding and leading a biotech?
Yeah, okay. So I think I've always been very, very interested in people and illnesses, medicine. I really strongly considered being a doctor for a long time. I don't really enjoy being in hospitals, and that was one of the things that put me off. But I really wanted to find a way to help kind of deliver therapies to humans, whether that was me doing it personally or helping the kind of the generation of those medicines. And I thought a long time. I studied biochemistry, and I thought afterwards again about doing a grad scheme for medicine. Finally decided that it was not for me and that I wanted to pursue a more academic route. I fell into parasitology while I was at UCL during my undergraduate, and I ended up with a brilliant Professor Osborne, where I worked under him on the malaria parasite, and I absolutely loved that project because you never question why you go to work when you work on malaria. 500,000 people die every year, and it's an incredibly we need a lot of brains on this to work on this. And I found it fascinating, both from the biological side and also from the human side as well. So that kind of led me into this world of parasitology. I then wanted to continue in that field, and that led me to my PhD in parasite molecular biology at Institut Pasteur in Paris, where I looked at African sleeping sickness. I loved my PhD, but I knew that I didn't want to stay in the lab. I think at that point, I began to recognize there was a bit of a distance between the academic research and what was going on for people in the field. And it felt that what I was doing, spending hours on a microscope looking at tiny green dots, trying to count how many GFP there were or something, I couldn't see the translation. And I've always been a people person and love working with people. And I think that's where I didn't know what I wanted to do when I finished my PhD. I'd never thought really about starting my own company. And then entrepreneurship kind of crossed my path because actually due to a tech incubator that kind of had been in contact with me since the second year of my PhD. And they were like, we think you should join. We think you'd be great. They make it kind of no risk. From the minute I joined, the incubator is called Entrepreneur First for people that know it. And they kind of put tech and business profiles together before they have an idea and before they have a team. And the minute I joined that incubator, I was like, this is the world I want to be in. This is absolutely fascinating. The pace, the impact, the possibilities, the excitement, being so people focused as well. Now my job all day, day in, day out, is talking to people, and I absolutely love that. And the work that we do is also for patient populations and for individuals, and I think that's always been really, really important for me. And whilst I loved the academic path, it slightly lost that connection, especially where I was working on a rare parasitic disease that is basically in remission now. The WHO doesn't recognize it as a public health concern anymore.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this. And what you're framing it is really, I love how you said biology and humans. So As you were talking about what you do today as a founder of the biotech you're leading, you said it's mainly with people and human and discussing with them. And obviously, this is not, I would say, what people would, the first thing would come to mind for startups and biotech. Like it's more about the science, the discovery. What are you doing? So I love how you framed it. I'm sure, and I know there's a lot of science behind it, but I want to dig a little bit deeper on this aspect. And how do you see the people aspect actually of a biotech as a leader?
I think it's absolutely central. I think it comes in a few axes. The first is in the people that you hire, and having a very, very strong team with you, and in being a leader to the people in the team that you've recruited. Number one, so your job as the leader is to support them to be the best they can be. Secondly, it comes in the external communications of the company and making sure that what you're doing is that there is a problem that you're solving and someone needs what you're working on. Because I think that it's very easy as an academic biotech, when people got academic backgrounds, just to solve scientific problems because they're interesting and they're challenging. But that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to make an impact for people. So it's really important that we're constantly out there talking to patients, talking to physicians, talking to patient groups, talking to people in the pharma industry, talking to people who have many more years than experience than anyone in our team does. Because combined, that's where we're going to really be able to find where the pain points are and be able to make sure that any product that we develop is needed by the industry. And we're not going to just develop something that someone else has gone and done anyway. That's the only way that you're going to, is by being people focused. And that's what I believe. Yeah.
Sure, and really like focusing on this unmet need, as you said, and the people you hire. So if I move to how did you build your team? How do you hire people, and how do you bring talent into your organization? I'd love to know your philosophy.
Yeah, I think hiring is one of the most important things for a startup success. It's incredibly challenging, and it's incredibly it's incredibly time consuming. The best advice I've ever been given was by another founder. And am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Be yourself.
Yeah. Well, basically he said, if it's not a fuck yes, it's a no. That's like, I'm constantly reminding my team when we're going through the recruitment process, and we've been recruiting for 6 months, 9 months, whatever, it's taking forever to find the perfect profile. But I think hiring is somewhere you have to be a perfectionist in a startup. You're going to get it wrong. People change, people have different needs, people's things, their life changes as well. But I think that you need to really follow your gut in terms of who you think can cope, and who can cope in an academic lab is very different to who can cope in a startup. You really need to cut out all sorts of perfectionism out of people, because perfectionism kills speed in a startup. And so I've learned a lot in my personal journey about the traits that I'm looking for in someone. I want everyone in the team to be an entrepreneur. I want everyone in the team to be a hustler. These are not necessarily easy things to find, especially when you're trying to recruit directly out of PhD, but they definitely exist. But you've just got to hunt for them, and it takes time. When you find the right people, it's amazing, and it's worth waiting.
I love what you shared, and I usually frame it in, if there is a doubt, there's no doubt. Like whenever you feel it out, and
the more polite way to put
it. Yeah, probably. So like probably the S side. Well, you talked about some of the trait: entrepreneur, hustler, obviously like the background of science, etc. So during the interview, like I'd love, since you're passionate about this, like how do you assess this? Have you made wrong hires? What is a wrong hire? Is it a wrong casting? I'd love to understand, how do you think about these? And if you only had successes, please let me know how you did this.
Of course I haven't only had successes. Another piece of advice I had was, it's about a 60% success rate. And I find that as well. And that if you're hitting that, it's pretty good. I think we're really learning as a team. It's not just me, it's other members of the team as well. We're learning to really assess what does someone truly and deeply want from their life, and are they prepared to work out of their comfort zone and go the extra mile? And I think there's a lot of ways that you can assess that. You can assess it practically by putting them out of their comfort zone in a case study and saying, Okay, come back to me with answers to these things in 48 hours and see how they cope with it. You can assess it by putting them on the spot with kind of more personal questions as well. I like to really ask people about more personal angles of how they cope with stress and things like that in interviews. So I think there's a couple of ways that you can do that, but above anything, I think you have to listen to your gut as well. Because while someone might on paper look perfect, if your gut feeling is that they're really not just going to be able to handle it, then you have to trust that and go with it. And I need to also trust other people in my team when they're recruiting that if their gut's telling them no, it's not going to work, then that's a no. If it's not tens across the board, it's a no.
So you are also passionate about helping transitions from academic, specifically women, into entrepreneurship and building startups. What is your biggest advice from your learning experience you would give people who want to do this jump?
I would just say be brave and take the leap. I think particularly with academics, we often feel that we need to get everything right. And we need to have everything, we have to have all the answers figured out. But you really don't, nobody does. And you've just got to throw yourself in and do the absolute best that you can do in any moment. Nobody knows the future. Nobody knows what's going to happen. We've got to just try our best, but it's the opportunity cost of not trying, I think is where you're missing out if you don't put yourself out there. I think I'm particularly passionate about supporting other women in this transition because I think women have a tendency to be more risk averse. And, a lot of people, when I started my company, particularly female colleagues, would say to me, "You're so brave. Wow, you're so brave. Why are you doing that?" And I'd look at them and I say, why am I so brave? What have I done? I haven't jumped off I'm not jumping off a bungee jump or something. I'm just trying, it's about your perception of risk. For them, they were seeing all the risk, but none of the upside. And it's like changing that mindset of yeah, but the possibilities are also incredible. So I don't see it as brave. I just see it as it's an opportunity that you've got to grasp. Yeah.
And I see that you would do it again and again. And I love this energy that is transmissible. Let me ask you something specifically about women founder. We know in the US, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about it globally and in France, as you're in France now. It's unfortunately still hard, underrepresented, and underfunded. Yeah. Even though I think more and more data is showing that companies founded by women and led by women performs better. Mm-hmm. So how is it in France? How do you see things in Europe? Are we getting better there? And how are you advocating for that?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly similar. It's across the board. It's 1% of companies are founded by 100% female founded companies. And only a small proportion more are male and female co-founded. But, it's a very small proportion of companies that are just led by women. I think that there is challenges with the ecosystem, but I also think that there's a lot to do with that risk-taking mindset of female individuals and how we can support them to feel comfortable. I'm part of a women in leadership program, and when we get together as a group of women, you just notice how much we're often afraid to make mistakes, I guess. We want to have all the answers figured out, and how to basically encourage women to just be more bullish on things, just to go for it. Even if they don't have all of the answers and they're not perfect, how can we just say, just give it a try? It's worth the risk, take the leap. And I think we're not taught as a society to push ourselves in that way so much. And that, of course, applies to many men as well. It's not only women, but I think that partly contributes. And then there's other challenges around, job instability of running a startup. There's not much support for that. I do think as a female founder, I get additional support. Actually, I would say I'm very well supported by the European Innovation Commission. They've been incredibly supportive to me. I've got a Women Tech EU grant from them that specifically supports female deep tech founders in the EU. And through that, I'm mentored by some amazing women as well. And that really helps me. So I think there's things that I've been able to access and benefit because I'm a female founder. That said, the pharma industry, a lot of the leaders are led by most of the leaders in the pharma industry are men. So I'm operating in a very heavily male-dominated industry when we look at the leadership side, and that is challenging. But I'd say in the startup world, it's beginning to become a more supportive ecosystem. But I think we need change at the level of empowering women to feel that they can take the risk, and maybe some way of mitigating that. It feels like such an extreme career risk, I think, for some women to take the leap to be a founder. So how can we support them in that?
Certainly, and I'm obviously also passionate about this and what we can do, not only from a startup. I see those moves happening in a lot in Europe and the US too, support for founders, startups, but it's better. But as you said, there is a long road, and certainly also for corporate world, this is one of the biggest focus that we should be having as leaders, empowering women. If we move into the science part, and just for people to know also about what you do within your company from a biotech standpoint, how would you define what you do in a simple way? What are you working on?
So we work on sugars. So sugars are carbohydrate molecules or glycans that are added to the surface of protein drugs that are really important for the efficacy and the longevity, so how well a drug performs. And what we have at Chiron Bio is a unique set of tools to control those sugars. So physically how long they are, how many of them they are, and how they behave in the human body. And we're applying this specifically to autoimmune diseases where there's a huge unmet need. Less than 50% of patients are in remission from disease. And we're using these innovative approaches to sugar engineering to design versions of drugs that have much higher efficacy in patients. And so that, we can target some of these major issues in the industry of patients being in chronic pain for life at sometimes. So developing much more efficacious treatments for the patients.
This is great and certainly impactful. What is currently your biggest challenge? Is it scientific? Is it funding? What is your biggest challenge as an organization and a leader?
That's a great question. There are so many challenges when you're running a startup. They range from very, very small things to very, very big things. I think the biggest challenge for us globally is getting the commercial development right. Like making sure that we're developing it's making sure that we're really it's the commercial development side. I can dive into more of that if you want, but it's the making sure that we are developing a drug that rheumatologists will say, yes, this is going in my patient.
Well, this is I love that you're framing it that way. And can you remind us which stage you are, if it's public, obviously? Like, I don't want you to go to things you don't want to share. But which stage you are, and why so early in your stage you're starting to think about that? That's a great point. Actually, when I talk with some biotechs, they are focused on their preclin and the innovation they have, and they don't think about let's make sure that it gets into patients' hands at the end of the day, because this is what we should all be doing, right? So I love that you framed it that way. So can you help us understand where are you in the journey?
Yeah, we're preclinical, but I think we have a set of tools that we can apply in a lot of different ways. And so my job as a CEO is to find the absolute best path where we can apply this. And I think probably contrary to other biotechs where they're spinning out one specific molecule and they're fixed on their path, they can't shift at all. We have a lot of potential with what we're doing for the sugar engineering. There are so many ways we can apply this in the pipeline for us. But for our first kind of commercial success, we need to get it right. And that's why it's very, very important that we are choosing the best application that's going to have the biggest impact in the clinic. And for me, it's really the clinicians, because those are the people that make the decision. Of course, in the US, there's also the healthcare providers that we have to think about, the pricing. We have to think about this a lot, because if we can't be competitive on pricing, no one's going to want our eventual drug. So I think it's very important for me that we're building something that is for patients, and the person that will decide whether it goes to a patient will be the clinician. So that's where we're very focused on that side of things, in understanding how can we make things better for the patients.
So, Emilia, I would move now to a section where I'm going to give you a word, and I would love your first reaction to it.
Okay.
The first one is leadership.
I would say freedom.
Oh, I want to. It's the first time I hear this reaction after 130 plus interviews. I'd love to learn more about it.
You want me to expand?
Yes.
Yeah. I think like being a leader there's a lot of freedom in that. Like you, first of all, you're your own boss, but also you have your freedom to run your team and do things, be dynamic, be agile in the way that you want to do it. I think there's a lot of freedom in being a leader. And you get to, I mean, I'm really talking about being a CEO here, but where you get to choose your team, you get to, design how the team runs and things like that. I think there's an awful lot of freedom there, like the kind of, yeah.
What about entrepreneurship?
Excitement.
Biotech.
Patience.
The last one is spread love in organizations.
Leadership would come in.
Can you expand on that?
Well, I mean, it's what I'm thinking, what comes to mind when I think about your podcast and kind of building up like leadership and hearing from different leaders. But I think leadership is also about spreading love in organizations and within teams as well, and making sure we're working together in a collaborative way.
Any final word of wisdom for healthcare leaders around the world?
I think it's just keeping the patients at the forefront of what we're doing. I think it's really, really important. We have some amazing innovations out there. How can we get these to patients as fast as possible?
Well, thank you so much, Emilia, for being with me today, and huge congrats to what you've achieved already with your company, and wishing you all the best in the next steps. Thank you again.
Thanks, Naji. Great to chat today.
Thank you all for listening to Spread Love in Organizations podcast. Subscribe and connect with us on SpreadLoveIO.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. Most importantly, spread love in your organizations and spread the word around you to inspire others and amplify this movement our world so desperately needs.